Welcome to NFL Daily, where we're so big time we can wear shorts to work. Yes, I'm here in the Chris Wesseling podcast studio with my partner, Patrick Claybon, who, he is big time enough. He's one of the only two people Eric Roberts has ever seen wearing shorts to work.
I'm shocked to hear that.
Yes.
Because honestly, I don't see myself as big time now, nor definitely when I first came here for my interview. Didn't wear shorts on my interview.
Yeah.
But in that first year, coming to work at 3 o'clock in the morning to do news shifts, who am I? Am I dressing up for the walls?
That's fair. No, but now you got people getting in your grill. I think it was Dave Schott, who's in the newsroom,
shout out to
runs
Dave.
the news department, and in some way the talent there. Like, I think I wore shorts once, and he yelled at me enough. And I've heard he yelled at you too, that I never did again.
It wasn't yelling. I think that first interaction with Gregg Rosenthal taught him a lesson. You don't come at Greg sideways. And it maybe gave Schott a little bit of a lesson on how to deal with people in shorts.
Well, it's a big show here. It's a pre-Super Bowl week show. And I told you guys before the show, it's just one of those days where you feel like you're always playing catch up. I feel like I'm stuck in a 1-2 count right now, and I'm just fouling the balls off and barely surviving. So I hope we deliver what's going to be a really fun show, and we're including you, our listeners, in it, because I asked on the old interwebs on Blue Sky for some questions, and so we're going to have a fun mailbag, and then we're also going to do our calls of the year.
I can't wait.
And we don't know who's going to win. Eric really took control of this process. He's putting on his big boy pants and covering up those big leg tattoos. And I don't know what's coming.
I went back and clicked through every recap show of the season.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
And listened to at least the opening highlight for every game of the year.
Wow.
So, again, before you guys get mad, and somebody thinks that your team is being slighted, listen to what Eric just went through. He's already done the work to do those calls every single week of the season. He went back and listened to every single one of them. Your team has not been slighted. He grinded for this.
Yeah, I had a list of like 40 to start, so we have to. We can't be here all day, guys.
Okay, that means we will get to the questions that you guys sent in again on Blue Sky after just a quick couple items I just want to throw out there. This is a daily show. We want to keep everyone abreast of what's happening around the league, and these are just quick hitters. I noticed the Cowboys, they extended their personnel chief, Will McClay. Nice move for them. Mm-hmm. Actually makes me feel a little better about what's going on in Dallas, as does the Eberflus defensive coordinator.
Things make sense.
Pickup. I like that because McClay's contract was coming up soon. There was some question. He's done a good job picking players along with the Joneses, of course. We hadn't mentioned on the show that the Bengals found their new defensive coordinator. It's Al Golden, who just did a nice job at Notre Dame, had previously been with the Bengals, and I believe when they fired Lou Anarumo, the buzz there was they're basically going to hire this guy. So he's their coach. They are not going to have their tight end Eric All for the entire 2025 season, which is really disappointing. He had a great rookie year. There were some complications after his surgery. And then I saw some quotes down at Mobile, the parallel universe of the NFL right now, that was from Andrew Berry. And he said, we have no interest in trading Myles Garrett. And you can even assume that we want to sign Myles again to a contract in the coming days, in the coming months. The fact that he said it so definitively, actually, I took that as that's real news. That's good.
You feel like there's no subterfuge here and it's all obvious?
I think when you say on the record we're planning to sign him to a contract, and he almost put a timeline on it, like it's going to happen this offseason, even though he has 2 years left on his deal, I feel like there's probably progress there, and he wouldn't just say that to say that. But maybe I'm wrong.
No,
maybe I think that's good news for the Browns.
It seems obvious, and that's a good thing. If people are going to do things that seem obvious and foregone, it's when things go the other way that kind of get weird, like signing a quarterback.
Yes, that was a problem. They need to go find a quarterback. Maybe they'll draft one of those quarterbacks in Mobile. We're going to talk about the Senior Bowl on our last show of the week. You'll hear that on Friday. I'm looking forward to that. And the only other item of news is really the subject of our first Skeet tweet. I like just calling them tweets. So let's throw them up there. This one is from Benoit Smart Car. He asks, is the Saints job the worst one this year, or the worst one this decade. Funny phrasing there. The news of the day, because yes, the Saints haven't hired their head coach yet, is that Kellen Moore did a second interview. And based on, if you're reading between the lines of the local reporting, it seems like he's now the favorite to get that job, and they might be waiting till the Super Bowl is over to give the keys to Kellen Moore for the New Orleans Saints. What do you think about that and this question?
Well, I think in terms of what's available right now, and Kellen Moore is not the hot name that he once was, considering the other options, one in particular that I've seen floated out there, I feel like Kellen Moore would be better than a John Gruden or some categorical failure and mistake, right?
He never interviewed in the end,
Yeah,
but it keeps being out there.
Yeah,
yes.
Praise God. But ultimately, as far as the job, like the evaluating the job, I really don't think it's that bad. If you think that Loomis is, has one foot out, if Gale is starting to look sideways at him, like if that's a particular thing, I don't know if it's that concerned. I'm looking back, if we're talking about worst jobs of the last decade, Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl. He had all the cash. Yeah, he got fired. He got fired by the same team that fired Andy Reid, right? He goes to Jacksonville with Trent Baalke, and they consistently get worse as time goes on. After that Urban fiasco, where I'm looking at it and saying, like, how great of a position was Doug in?
Interesting. And yes, I think with the way the Jaguars have gone about this coaching search, and they don't even have a GM right now, like they don't seem like they know what they're doing.
There was a couple of pre-D'Amico coaching situations in Houston.
That was the first one that came to mind.
I don't think this compares to either one of those. I know we can do the cap malfeasance thing and talk about projecting things into the future, and I don't necessarily think the cap prohibits you from being close. I mean, the team had an opportunity in the division this year, right? It was, and I think we have a referential question coming up later where we can get into specifics on the 2024 Saints. But this team was devastated by injuries all across the board, and as well as coming in with Dennis Allen as your head coach again in 2024, where I don't necessarily think it's that bad of a job.
I think it's one of the worst jobs of the decade. I wouldn't say it'd be the worst. I would say those Houston teams were the first one that popped to mind. I think the Gerard Mayo, even though I was very harsh on him, entered a pretty difficult situation last year. Drake May arriving made that a little better, but at the time he got it, especially in the roster that he had and just the situation there. That was pretty rough. The Panthers, pre-Canales, I mean, just it's been a rough road. But this Saints job, I think, is uniquely bad because of the Mickey Loomis situation. It really seems like he is staying. And I think the way that he has run that team, it's just time. And he is running it in such a way that he has as much power as almost anyone. And I thought he might get pushed out. And you see the different people that didn't want that job. Aaron Glenn literally talked about at his press conference how much he wanted the Jets job compared to the Saints. He was in that building just 5 years ago. So he knows exactly what's going on. I think that should be a red flag to Gale Benson. Joe Brady was in that building, and the Saints were very interested in him by all reports. He decides to stay in Buffalo. So these are two guys that knew the organization well. Ben Johnson was not in that building, but worked with a lot of people that were. Dan Campbell, he's hiring a guy as his OC that was with Sean Payton in New Orleans. There's a lot of connection there. He didn't want to go there. And I think Mickey Loomis in New Orleans, to me, is very similar to the Trent Baalke situation. And you can say that the roster could be worse. You're right. There are worse teams out there for sure. It's not a tough division. But the quarterback situation is very tricky with what you're going to do with Derek Carr. If you keep him another year, then it kind of kicks the can down the road, and the salary cap is a problem. I think at some point, as much as I think it's been a little overblown, like you're going to have to bite the bullet a little bit and start thinking about not just shooting for 7 or 8 wins. So that's a tough situation. I don't know if Kellen Moore is the guy to turn it all around. I don't even know if if you ask the average Eagles fan, they're not super pumped on Kellen Moore. I mean, I know.
I mean, give it a week and a half, Greg.
Right, we'll see. That's fair. Let's go to the next question. This one is from Los G's.
Los G's.
Which it's just like a familiar name. I feel like feel like we've crossed paths here before.
Probably. It does feel familiar.
Halfway through the decade, which players are locks for the all-decade team? I love this question. He said Mahomes is the first QB. Which QB would be second, Allen or Lamar? Well, to answer the second question first, it's clearly Lamar because he has 2 first-team All-Pros this decade and probably 2 MVPs. So I think he's got probably a solid lead as the second-team quarterback right now, but we're only halfway through the decade, and Josh has a chance there. It's not like a huge gap, and Joe Burrow will be in that mix. Who knows? Jaden Daniels might be in that mix.
Yeah, fun fact, in looking into that question, I had to remind myself that Tom Brady had 12,000 passing yards since the start of 2020, which was crazy to me, but it wasn't even close. But
Tom Brady with the Bucs was like incredible. Anyways,
it doesn't make any sense, but he's not going to have the longevity in the decade. The first team, really, I think the more interesting conversation, because we can beat Patrick and Josh. I mean,
no, forget about
Josh and Lamar to death. The running back discussion.
Oh,
with what Saquon's doing now.
Yeah,
Derrick Henry, I think.
Yeah,
has that first team case.
Okay, so far.
But it's going to be a push. It's going to be a push here towards the finish.
It's a long way to go, though. Bijan Robinson, I think, could have a chance in the long run. You got to get there. So I took the question very, very literally, and this was probably my favorite one I got because it speaks to what I get into, these Hall of Fame cases, all this stuff. And I went and searched on Pro Football Reference, and you can sort by approximate value, which is just like a good way of like starts and awards. And then I just figured, well, you probably have to have one first-team All-Pro to even be considered halfway through the decade. So I sorted it by that. And the question was, who are all-decade locks only halfway through? That is an extremely high bar to be a lock halfway through. Why can't I say the word lock normally? And I come
normally all 3 times.
I came up with one total lock, and that's Myles Garrett. He has 4 first-team All-Pros. I don't actually think there's a case for anyone as better at what he's done. He's what
I hear the angry reprisal.
Okay,
from
it's
a certain
fair.
Part of the country.
It's a good point. TJ Watt has 3 first team All-Pro, so he's only 1 behind there. Approximate value, he was the highest non-quarterback. He was actually 3rd overall, according to Pro Football Reference, behind Lamar and Patrick Mahomes, just in terms of their little metric. But I just think 4, and I think he's going to keep it going. To me, he's a lock just about. The other 2 that popped up, to me, they have really good case. Chris Jones is at 3, and I think with what he's done in the playoffs, even if it doesn't, we'll see how the rest of the decade goes. Man, he'll be tough to keep off that. And then Fred Warner's interesting. He's done it. He's done first team All-Pro 4 out of 5 years now. So he's pretty up there. Those were the closest I found to locks. It's hard to make a lock halfway through the decade because you never know what's going to happen in the next 5 years. Even Mahomes isn't necessarily a lock if some quarterback like Allen or Jaden or Burrow just go absolutely crazy and have the best stretch we've ever seen from a quarterback. That's possible, but those are my locks.
Yeah, there's a long way to go. I kind of wondered towards the front end, right? Because I was looking in to the Brady situation where, because Tom doesn't qualify, but the guys who retired in 2019, the guys who are set to retire right now, who's got those 5 years to get in, and it becomes a little tougher.
It's one of the things that's annoying about the all-decade team, which I do like, that there is just a randomness to it, that when your career, like if you start at 15 and end at 25, you have a less likely chance to make the all-decade team than if you start at 10 and end at 20.
So Kelsey, I guess, are both Kelseys out?
They have chances. I wrote them down as like guys who would have a chance. They both have a couple All-Pros, but Travis, I think, would have a better chance, certainly, that he would be my pick at tight end for the last 5 years.
Okay.
So far. But we got 5 more to go. Some other interesting names. TJ Watt, he's got 3 first-team All-Pros. Trent Williams, he could get it done. Roquan Smith has 3 first-team All-Pros. I don't know if is he an all-decade guy? He might be.
it would the linebacking group would lean with heavy bias towards guys in the middle, and so like you may get that positional malfeasance, right? Where like Roquan's playing outside.
We'll see. And then some guys who I think have a chance. JJ, I think, has a great chance. He has 2 first-team All-Pros so far, but he's got this whole rest of the decade to go. Tyreek and Devontae Adams both have 3, and so they're in that mix, but they're kind of headed on the downslope. And then some younger guys, Tristan Wirfs, Penei Sewell, both have a couple early, so if they can start stacking up numbers. Jamar Chase is another one. Aaron Donald did, pack in 3 pretty great
That's what I'm saying.
years. So... fun question. I like thinking about that, and it's not over at quarterback. You could always catch up to Patrick Mahomes. You never know. All right, let's go to the next one. This is from the Red Shark. It asks, should the 49ers draft a quarterback next year or this year? Can they win a Super Bowl if they pay Purdy?
Yes. I mean, yes. Can they win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy on the roster? Yes. Can they construct the roster in the way that they need to? I think you have an advantage when you get a player that's good and shows success early on that you don't necessarily have to play. I mean, Brock Purdy was getting paid at more in the supplemental bonus and the play performance bonus.
Right. They already could have won the Super Bowl. Yeah. He played more than well enough, I think, throughout that playoff run to win a Super Bowl. If their defense played a little bit better, a few things happen, they win a Super Bowl.
But I think, right, the way that we've seen these quarterback contracts grow over the course of years, where the percentage of the cap, I don't think you're going to have to give them cap percentage money like Tua got or Trevor Lawrence got, right? Because it's just the way that these contracts line up and the timing of who gets paid when they get paid. Yeah, you could get a number that would look crazy a few years ago, but percentage of the cap wise, I don't necessarily think it's going to do the damage where it's like, oh God, we got to play the quarterback, because like the guys that got paid we just saw them in the playoffs. Like these are the guys, or you either were getting paid or you were a highly selected draft pick. These are the guys that it takes to win. Brock Purdy's earned payment, in my opinion, and I know that there's a whole bunch of asinine arguments. The guy's gone out there and played well, and it hasn't been an abject disaster. So, yeah, he deserves to be compensated.
Yeah, I don't want it to drag out all offseason. I think the 49ers have made a mistake handling it that way with so many of their stars. But people get so fixated on, can you possibly win with a quarterback on your cap that big? Last year, 4 or 5 of the teams that had the highest dead cap in the entire league were in the divisional round. And so that's not just like paying $50 million to a really good player. The Rams, for instance, who I think had a really good team last year, the Packers, who had a really good team last year, they're paying $60-70 million in cap space to nobody, to Aaron Rodgers, who was off the team, to Aaron Donald, who was off the team, and they made it happen anyways. The 49ers, even this year, like so much of their cap was in Ayuk and Debo and McCaffrey, and those guys, frankly, weren't giving them that much this year. Debo was mostly healthy, and they were all smart investments at the time. But like, teams spend $50 million routinely in worse ways than an above-average quarterback. So I think it's very possible. Does it get 12% harder? Maybe. It maybe becomes 12% harder to construct your team. But I think people really overrate whatever that percentage is.
Almost to the extent that we overrate winning this one game coming up here in the next couple of weeks and determining like how good is a team. Yes, everybody wants to win a Super Bowl. It's great to win a Super Bowl. It would be great for Brock Purdy had they been able to complete that pass where Chris Jones got in his face and they win the Super Bowl. But ultimately, in determining how good a team is and how capable they are, it doesn't necessarily, because ball's not round. Randomness dictates a whole lot of this. Yes, you can win with Brock.
Well, this leads perfectly into our next question from Stage 8 Final Boss. Shout out to the Blue Sky followers out there. I mean, I don't love that they suddenly get way more people because of events that are happening in the world, but good questions here. And this one is directly related to what you just talked about, Patrick.
I'll take it.
What is that Howie Roseman is doing that other GMs aren't? We've seen him miss on free agents, namely last season. I mean, missed on some this season. I mean, Bryce Huff. But the cap situations that restrict other teams never seem to bother the Eagles. Related to Purdy, I think Jalen Hurts in this Eagles team is a perfect example that you do not need your $50 million quarterback to be one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the league to construct a really talented team around said quarterback. I've seen Jalen Hurts play better football than he did this year. They almost won a Super Bowl with him playing at a ridiculously high level 2 years ago. He has not played consistently at that level this year, and yet front to back, these are the two best teams I think this year in the league that happen to make the Super Bowl this year. They deserved it, and so that's a great example. I'll let you go first on what you think Howie is doing right.
Well, there's been key points where the rest of the league failed. Right, getting Saquon on this contract, everybody should have been in on this. This wasn't any particular genius level operation by Howie. This was a very good player in the division that they had seen plenty of times, and there was an opportunity to sign him at a reduced rate because overall the league circumstances prohibited running backs from being paid what they should.
Well, and the Eagles were as influential in that happening as anyone, which is funny. And then they watched the price get so low that they realized, like, oh, actually, this would be great.
Yeah, a spectacular move that literally everybody should have made. Saquon Barkley should have been on everybody's radar, but it's also hitting on these high variance things where, I don't know, draft circumstance, I think a conversation surrounding Jalen Carter made it feel like that was a high variance thing, but it was known going in, right, that this was one of the best players in the draft, if not the best player in the draft, and he was going to be there at 8. And so, I think that's another situation where everybody else's evaluation, regardless of how you feel about the situation, the ability of the player, right? If people had known that the player was going to demonstrate this level of ability on the football field, he wouldn't have been there for the Eagles to take, right? So there's a couple of aspects there, and it's also getting out of things that aren't necessarily working because how he has the success. He's not constantly trying to save his job or keep his job. Where if there's a Hassan Reddick type situation, if there's a Carson Wentz type situation, it just
Bryce Huff's not going to be on this team anymore next year. They're just going to eat that as a mistake.
Like Howie recognizes that sunk cost is a logical fallacy, and just go. If you can make a move, make it. And he has the cachet to be able to do that because he's not constantly worried about his job.
Yeah, and that's key, that they have a defined setup. Now, it's not always that comfortable for coaches. I don't think the coaches there are empowered. I think they kind of view the coaches as temporary employees. They're a little fungible to them, and that's just the way they do it. But they have been consistent with that's Jeffrey Lurie and their owner and Howie Roseman really run the team in that manner, and he trusts Howie to do so, and it's consistent. I think probably the there's two things I think they do better than other teams is that they sign their own guys who are good early. Like really early. Like Jordan Mailata's, how many contracts has Jordan Mailata had? Like they gave him a second contract after he played like 4 games. They're like, oh my God, what did we find? And then they gave him a third contract when it's just like, let's get 2 years out in front of this. And if you look throughout the roster, do you remember the A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith contracts that they got this offseason? No, nobody does. A.J. Brown, no one even knew that he wanted a new contract because he was still 2 years away from it. But they wanted to make sure Devonta got his, and then they knew that might have played a certain way to the guy who's actually the best wide receiver on the roster, and they extended him. And so then, of course, A.J. Brown wants his numbers, but I think he's a happier, productive Eagle when he's not getting his numbers because he feels like he was taken care of fairly. And you can go up and down this roster. Josh Sweat is actually another great example. Paid early and often, not a super. I'm not saying they've done this perfectly with everyone, but I do think they do that more than other teams.
And what that does is your window gets extended, right? Because you're not having to worry about these decisions, and also the price isn't going down. Like these guys,
right? They usually get ahead of it and they look good. Lane Johnson, like when was the Lane Johnson contract like problems? It never happens. They're always 2 years ahead of it, and actually, it's almost unfortunate for their players. Like it's not unfortunate because they're happy to get that money early, but like Lane Johnson never totally maxes out as like the best right tackle in the league like he should money-wise. But anyways, that's a good
job. And we see the exact converse of that down in Dallas where it's like, wait until the absolute last minute and pay these players. It's which, again, I'm grateful if the player wants to take the risk and the team wants to pay out a huge contract to Micah or to Dak. Yeah, I'm all for that. But if you make somebody an offer that they would like to have 2 years early, then you have the opportunity. You don't have to wait till.
And they take swings. Like Mekhi Becton was a swing, and Huff was a swing too. Like they miss on plenty of the swings. Jahan Dotson, a little bit of a miss on a swing. I think they've been better in general when you're talking about what teams could do to copy them. They trade a lot. I think trades are an underrated part to just try to improve your team. And some have really not worked for them. I don't know that their hit rate is like that much higher than other teams, but they have a philosophy. They stick to it. And the philosophy is we will never stop signing and drafting linemen on both sides. And they never stop it. No matter what the year is, they're always just throwing in. And they've been so consistent with that over a 10-year period. And it really has worked for them. Maybe other teams can have a different philosophy, but like they are really consistent with that. Let's go to our next one as we just shower the Eagles in love. Now we're going to go to one that I agreed with from Kyle Bruno here, saying, why doesn't anyone talk about the Dolphins having a long-suffering fan base? Longest playoff win drought. That surprised me. That's since 2000. They have the longest one in the entire NFL.
Yeah, I did not know that.
And I didn't know the Commanders had such a long one before this year, too. And that was really long. The Raiders are the second longest, by the way. No, Jets are third. No Super Bowl win since 73. No AFC title since 92. The owner got the team docked a first-round pick for tampering. The QB is the face of concussions. Bad. A lot of free agent signings. I don't know why fans all want to be recognized as a team that suffers the most pain. But you are right that the Dolphins kind of slide under the radar. The reason is because it seems like it's fun to play in Miami, and because they're always they're very often a 7 to 9 win team. But I would kind of agree with Dolphins fans who identify with that particular sort of pain, because they're always just mediocre to average, and they never win a playoff game. That actually is a pretty good measure of like who's going through it the most, because a playoff win feels awesome. And it really, in making the playoffs is great, but when you make the playoffs and you just go 1-and-out, and it's like Skylar Thompson or it's Tua in the cold not being competitive, it kind of just feels like you really didn't belong there, and you don't have that good. One playoff win can feel great. And so I'm with you. I think the Dolphins are sneaky up there.
I think one reason, right, because I think we've discussed all of these things, not the particular playoff drought, right? We saw that kind of shift with the Commanders' run this season. But ultimately, in that division, as far as bemoaned fan bases, people in New York are always going to get more attention for like whatever they got going on. And so I think that's a particular reason that it doesn't get discussed now. Like throwing Tua having a brain in there is kind of unfair.
Yes, I wish I didn't read that out loud. I was gonna kind of mentally edit that, but that's my bad.
The interesting thing is Tyreek Hill doesn't count as a bust free agent signing. To me, I think the Tyreek signing was great.
It was great.
That's the most notable one.
They gave up a lot, but
yeah, they did right with these trades, right? Because you have to make the pay to do it. It feels like a free agency signing there. Other than that, it's tough to really think of like a great free agency pickup that the Dolphins have had.
Well, they had that one year they gave Mike Wallace and a couple other guys, and they were like the off-season winners. They've done that quite a bit.
One that is not necessarily sneaky bad, but people forget that they drafted Minka. They had Minka in there. And Minka is like a franchise stalwart in Pittsburgh where if things go right, the end of his career could be spectacular, and they'll remember him as like a lifelong Steeler, but this was a guy that you shipped out. So yes, we should appreciate Finn's fan misery and equally talk about them as much as the other.
Well, more than anything, I think they're an underrated fan base. I hope to see our friend Henry Hodgson, the most famous of all Dolphins fans. They're very knowledgeable, very passionate, and they've been going through it. Let's go to our next one. Zach Joseph asks, all the Final Four teams are top 10 in running. Do you think it's going to be a trend of great offenses emphasizing the run and how defenses will adjust? I think we've been going this way for a while. That's top 10 in running. Depends what the metric is you're looking at, because winning teams run more because they're ahead. But I do think some of the trends we talked about going into the year, more 2 tight end looks, teams going heavier, they really have happened. And you're seeing the best running backs now. We're seeing kind of like the early aughts when they were dominating fantasy. We had about 5 or 6 of those monster running back seasons this year. There is something to it, and I think you're seeing more creativity in the running game. Like teams now don't just like run one thing; they run 7 things, and they run a couple of them run it in insanely different ways. And now the run game is almost like how the pass game, how that evolution happened, where it's just you got to get yourself a cool run game coordinator like Matt LaFleur.
Yeah, it's all cyclical, right?
Yes.
I don't think we're ever going to be done with the fundamental aspect of football. Kind of like that discussion kind of seemed a little short-sighted to me a few years ago, where it's like, yeah, why run the ball at all? It made me think back to like those early days watching football as a kid, where it's like, why do they just run into people's backs 3 times? You know, it seemed overly simplified, and so yeah, I'm glad that. You know, because every coach comes in and gets hired, like, yeah, we want to be multiple, we want to attack, and we say all these things. But yeah, it's a fundamental aspect of the game. It's all going to be cyclical. We're going to see trends change over the course of years, and you're going to want to put, if you have a guy that you're going to give the ball 20 to 25 times a game, you're going to want him to be good. And these teams have good players at that spot.
And I think there will be some teams that lean into it even more in terms of size. I think it's notable that Philly and KC are 2 of the bigger teams out there. I know it's a little random that like these are the 2 teams that made the playoffs. I mean, made the Super Bowl, but Philadelphia is a large team. Kansas City's a pretty big team actually as well. Detroit's a large team. There are physically you do see some mismatch of just drafting size, and so that might become a thing again. Our next question is from one of my favorite longtime listeners, Eric. In Utah, Eric Utah, I guess we're calling him. He's got his own podcast, by the way, the End Zone podcast. Shout out to Eric 18. That's how we know him on Blue Sky. He said, did Dan Campbell kill it with his OC hire? A Peyton disciple paired with the intermediate receiving kings of Sun God and Tim Patrick paired with an elite game. Well, that just sounds to me like the Lions are elite paired with J-Mo taking the top off. John Morton was a really surprising hire. I was like, why is that name familiar, John Morton? Because he's not an up-and-comer. He was an offensive coordinator for 1 season in the NFL. It was with the 2017 Todd Bowles Jets, led by Josh McCown, Robbie Chosen, Anderson at the time, and Austin Safarian Jenkins. So there not much was going on with that team, although McCown played sneaky good.
That was the best McCown season.
Yes, and you can't really blame Morton there for getting swept out. Like all of Todd Bowles' offensive coordinators back then, he lasted exactly 1 year. I don't know if that was all Todd's choice or not, but I don't know if it's sneaky great. It was very surprising because I think people thought they would be doing this new cutting-edge guy on their own team, and they dip into someone he's familiar with. But at this point, Dan Campbell has completely earned my trust in terms of his coaching tree and who he chooses. And he also chose Kelvin Shepard, a former Bills player who was once traded 1-for-1 for Jerry Hughes and was always in my mind as one of the worst trades of that decade because Jerry Hughes was incredible for the Bills. But Kelvin Shepard, now a defensive coordinator, I bet he'll be great too. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on John Morton and the Lions.
Well, I think, right, because you get the Peyton tree, right, which is Dan Campbell is a part of. There's familiarity there. I think a lot of the things we associate with Ben Johnson were the things that we could see, right? Because that's how our bias impacts, and we see a team that's very aggressive. Dan Campbell's going to remain aggressive. I think the particular skill sets of the players lend to those trick plays, right? Like I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is such a skilled receiver, and Jared Goff is such an accurate passer that it leads to those hook and ladder opportunities to make those hook and ladder plays. Where I feel like the Lions are still going to run trick plays. I think that's still going to be an integral part of the process. And Bears fans may be disappointed when they're like, where's the razzle dazzle? Because it's the guys. I think that make you able to do that. And so there may be a fall off, but I still think the Lions are going to score plenty of points because they got the guys that can score plenty of points.
Yeah, and I do think they need to start adding to that offensive line again. Getting a little older, not quite as good on the interior either. I'm going to go speed round through a couple more of these. You can throw it up or not, Eric, but we'll just go through quickly. CM Bailey asked, what's a home run swing at QB you'd like to see the Steelers make? There's really no home run swings out there other than Matthew Stafford. So that would be my...
Yeah, swing for the fence.
That's it. We got one from N7 Thunder who asks, should the Texans give Stephon Diggs a new contract or let him walk? I think it makes a lot of sense. They know him. He knows them. It's difficult for Diggs that this is his free agent year coming off of a in injury. I think it's best in those situations. It's good to maybe stay where you know.
If they do not go that way, I have some value options that
Oh,
would
okay.
be great with C.J. Stroud. Darius Slayton is incredibly underrated. He's been imprisoned in New York in the same way that Saquon Barkley has.
Wow.
I think Nick Westbrook-Akine would be a nice value signing in the division. Diami Brown is coming up on free agency. I don't know if the Commanders are going to let him go. And sneakily, MVS, also set to be a free agent, also made a nice run towards the end.
You can bring Deontay Johnson back.
Well, no, I don't think that's going to happen.
We got one wanting some fantasy takes. Who's a hot dynasty trade based on coaching coordinator movement? I think the Bears, Caleb and Rome, it's a good time to buy. Drake May, CJ Stroud, buy low. Drake London, Bajan. Like, whatever price Bajan is, he would be my number one overall, dynasty player.
Yeah. But nobody's letting go of Bijan or Jahmyr Gibbs right now. If you want to vibe check your league, see what the Bryce Young value is at. That people may be holding in that situation. It all just depends on who's on your roster and who you're able to get. But I'm with Greg. Buy low on CJ all day.
And our friend Jackson Bevins, who does the Cigar Thoughts podcast, but also writes a great column, Cigar Thoughts, too, asked about Kubiak in Seattle and whether last year New Orleans was on the injuries. I don't know. Kubiak's actually had a lot of chance. He's actually has looked pretty solid throughout. He seems like he's not going to hurt you. I don't know about Geno Smith in a system. I want Geno to be able to make a lot of decisions, and usually that's a system where you're just kind of doing A, B, C. But I hope they can marry the system to make Geno as Geno as possible.
Well, if anybody can take an ABC system and add a D.
There we go.
And an E, it's Eugene Cyril Smith. I do, because again, the Saints had the most unique offensive line combinations this season. 10 different offensive linemen had 50 or more snaps. So it wasn't just the injuries to those skill guys, because our cigar friend had mentioned the skill guys.
Jackson.
Yeah, it's there was a lot that went wrong in New Orleans, including having the head coach that did at the start of the season.
Yeah, the fact that they were all kind of in sync at the beginning of the year when they were healthy was a pretty good sign. So I'm excited for that. Let's take a quick break. We're gonna do the calls of the year right after this. Back on NFL Daily, it's all been leading to this. One man put together the most thorough and researched and excellent candidates for calls of the year it's ever been. And two men are going to sit here in the Chris Wesseling podcast studio and decide what is the call of the year. I think that's the format.
Yeah, we'll do it.
I don't think there's a reason to muddy this up, guys.
Okay.
You just listen, have some fun, look back, think about, hey, remember when the Colts were popping off in week 1?
It's very much a remember when. This is, as I said on the show with Mina and Colleen and Jordan when we were talking about the tiny table results, we were talking about the over-unders. I feel like this is kind of close the circle week. All the things we threw out there at the beginning of the year, we also have our all-pro team coming up. We close the circle here. We finish this season before moving on to the off season. We're going to group this in different categories. And the first category is just that was fun. Remember that? This is a fun category of plays. Let's go back to week 1 to start.
5.5 minutes to go. First quarter. Indianapolis trails 3-0. But they've got it now first and 10 on their own 40. Richardson on play action. Backs to throw. He slips on the turf. Gets up. Heaves it downfield. Looking for Alec Pierce. He's got it! Touchdown! A bomb! 60 yards! Anthony Richardson to Alec Pierce. That's what you're talking about in the deep game. Touchdown! INDY!
Oh, I love it. Matt Taylor on WFNI. Rick Venturi there in the booth. Remember when I was trying to do throw of the year and then I just sort of forgot about it halfway through? It's because that was the first one and I knew no one was going to beat it.
Yeah, every throw, every deep throw. I think Bo Nix had the one late in the season.
That was pretty sweet.
But in terms of the total play, I think the call was as good as the throw.
Ooh,
just
okay.
the exclamation point of after Pierce catches the ball and goes in the end zone, a bomb. I think that was great execution. I love the play, love the call.
I love that analysis by you, and this is a real pro with the pipes here.
I don't know about that,
Patrick. That throw, one of the best throws of all time. It's not even a joke. It really is.
Better than PJ Walker.
PJ Walker's is up there.
You're talking about the throw.
Those are two of the best throws of all time. It's okay, guys. Like, it doesn't have to win a Super Bowl to be one of the best throws of all time. It really was. That's a strong candidate. I'm gonna go ahead and say, like, that's in the small circle of real contenders. Although I'll probably say that after every single one because I'll get excited anew. Let's go to Week 11 and let's go to Nashville.
Levis in the shotgun. 6 men set to rush. Levis from his end zone, firing deep downfield for Westbrook. Akine, he's got it! 40, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, 5, end zone! Touchdown! Titans! The longest touchdown pass of the year in the National Football League just went 98 yards!
Oh, Mike Keith, the best. WGFX. Sad news that Mike Keith is moving on to Tennessee, the Volunteers, away from the Titans.
And so that means this may be our last chance to hear Mike Keith on this particular podcast, and that is sad. But it was a bad play by the Vikings defense in an absolutely hopeless game where the Titans had done nothing. It was 16-3 at that point, and just bad coverage leads to that 98-yard NWI touchdown. So the call better than the play.
I mean, the call, it's the yards. It's just Mike Keith's voice and the way he rolls that yards. That's another strong contender. Inner circle. Let's go to Week 13. I know it was tough probably for Eric to pick only one Bills play. Not that you had to limit it to one per team, but I'm looking at the sheet and I see that's kind of what you did. This is the Bills snow lateral Josh Allen Week 13.
First and goal from the 7. Allen under center. Takes the snap. Quick hitter. Thrown behind, but somehow caught. And now lateral to Allen and reaching for the pylon. Are you kidding me? It's a touchdown. Unbelievable. A catch by Amari Cooper. A lateral to Josh Allen. And he runs the remaining 5 yards for the score. Have you ever seen that one before?
Oh, great job by Chris Brown on WGR. What did he say there? Can you believe, like, a well-timed can you believe it?
Yeah.
Always hits.
And also it contextualized the fact, because looking back, we remember that Amari pitched the ball to Josh Allen. But when you hear the call, you remember Amari had almost no business catching that ball.
Yes.
In the first place, it was thrown a full yard behind him on the slant, and he reaches back and catches it with one hand. And then Josh is, calling for an insane play to be made because that's Josh, and that's why we love him. And yeah, the call fits that.
Great memories.
Also, probably the seed for all his little lateral thoughts and plays coming down the home stretch.
See,
of the
Amari
season.
Cooper trade was worth it.
He's like, remember that one time it worked? Sorry,
no one got my little jab there. It was mean. It was mean.
It wasn't mean.
It was mean.
It worked out.
It worked out. Just for giving us that memory. I hope you remember the good times of that Bills season. There was some fun
I do.
ones.
I had a fun time.
There was fun ones. Let's go to Week 4. It's Ben Johnson. It's Jared Goff. It's a trick play.
2nd and goal for the Lions from the 7. Goff out of the gun. Montgomery to his right. Jared leans in. There's the snap. Jared on the end around. Gives it to Amon-Ra. He's going to throw it to Jared. It's to the end zone. Jared Goff. Oh, baby, on the receiving end of a pass from Amon-Ra St. Brown. Oh, Ben Johnson, I see you too. That is beautiful stuff. That is Monday Night Magic.
Yeah, love it. Dan Miller, last year's winner of the Call of the Year, WXYT, Lomas Brown. Dan Miller, I feel like, has been as much a part of the Sunday night recaps as anyone.
Yeah, because the team scores nonstop points, and it's hard to pick, even hard to pick a trick play. But that one in a score fest where you get the energy of the game, the historical matchup between these Seahawks and Lions teams we've had these past few years.
There was a couple booths where it was hard to like whittle it down to one. I mean, we'll have a little section later, but like some of these booths are just great at what they do.
They absolutely are. One of those booths is Paul Allen and KFAN in Minnesota. I'm curious which one you picked here. This is from week 16.
1st and 10 from the Seattle 39. 3:58 to go. Seattle leads by 4 in the fourth quarter. Sam steps up. Sam throws left. Caught. Jefferson. Touchdown. Sam, the man on the fan, finds the moneymaker, Justin Jefferson.
Oh, that's a great option right there. And I see what you did here, Eric. You're kind of picking some great plays that live up to the calls.
Yeah.
And I like that because we're going down memory lane and we're remembering some of the best moments of this entire season. I would say that was the peak of the Vikings season, but no, the next week they put it on the Packers, right? And they went up even another level, but that was pretty exciting back and forth. That was the comeback win in Seattle. They were actually down 4 at that moment.
And I think it would stand some people because we can all remember how it fell apart at the end. But Sam Darnold, time and time again, when there were plays to be made late in games for a stretch there this season, he was making them. Like, we can't take those away.
All right, our next category of plays are from gentlemen who were on the program this year. And in no way do they get any favoritism. They're on the program because they do the damn thing.
Facts.
In the first place. Week 1, Matt Money Smith.
Herbert to throw. And has him on the crosser. It's McConkey. Shuffle. Touchdown. Oh, lad. 10-yard touchdown toss.
That's strong.
And he broke 2 sets of ankles on that touchdown grab. What a play for the rookie.
He hit the brakes and watched the plane fly right by, and then another plane flew by, and he skipped into the end zone.
Call him Maverick.
Oh, dang. That's another strong one. I mean, we got some real options here because that's a call you can't plan.
No.
I mean, that is all off the dome. It's the partnership between Money and DJ. I have to admit they have good chemistry.
And it led to the creation. We saw Ladd literally flying a plane in celebration later on in the season. Like that moment, just a moment where Money and DJ are looking up at planes coming down, landing at LAX. We had the shuffle in there because they're playing against the Raiders, right? So Money makes the shuffle call there. It's just, of course.
That was
biased,
pretty perfect.
but it was
That's going to be tough to beat. Let's go to week 8. Our friend Andrew Siciliano. This was in the aftermath of a tough loss for them. Tim Donovan, the longtime Browns play-by-play guy.
If you're the Cleveland Browns, one play to get a huge emotional win.
You got to defend 24 yards. Let's go. 3 seconds. This is it. For the win. Make some noise wherever you can hear the sounds of our voice right now. 24-yard line. Shotgun. Browns up 29-24. Lamar Jackson has the football. Browns rushing 4. Lamar flushed out. Lamar chased by Za'Darius. Lamar Jackson avoids Za'Darius. He's got to throw it. Directing traffic. Pump fake. Now throwing. End zone. Back corner. No good. Incomplete. The Browns win. 29-24. You just knew it. You knew it. You felt it. So many things happened in this game that are unexplainable. And it all ended up to a Browns win. This one's for you, Jim Donovan.
Getting a little misty here in the studio. Awesome job by Andrew and Nathan Segura. And a reminder of something I try to keep in mind and voice on this show, which is that like one game can be pretty special. I know this was a miserable Brown season, and yet I don't think that takes away from anything of the emotion of that win that was in that booth and the connection they had with Jim Donovan and the city. And what an exciting just day of football that was against the team they hate the most in the world, too. It helps a little extra, beating the Ravens that day. What a great call by Andrew and Nathan Zagura.
Yeah, and not just culminating the cultural context of the week and the loss of Jim, right? But the fact that the game had built up to that point.
Yeah.
Andrew highlighting so many things that took place that didn't necessarily make any sense on a bad Browns team against the Ravens team that would ultimately contend in the playoffs, where, yeah, sometimes all that stuff doesn't matter, and on a Sunday, magic can happen. And we should appreciate it.
Yeah, that was awesome. Let's go to a guy who's on the Mount Rushmore of calls of the year. I think he was a runner-up last year. Why are we even making runners-up? Let's go Tyler Higbee, Week 16. His return.
2 tight end set with the strength to the right of Matthew Stafford, who's under center. From that right side, Puka in motion. Play fake, roll right. Stafford throws, caught by Higbee at the 10. Big Rig Higgs to the goal line. Touchdown! Tyler Higbee, welcome back. Big Rig Higgs, touchdown LA!
I love it. JB Long, of course. I forgot to say his name leading into it. There were so many fun JB Long calls throughout the season on KSPN.
Yeah, you feel the excitement. Of course, we got some other plays coming up against the Jets. But yeah, to have a player come back and to hear that in JB's voice and have him get in the end zone, it comes through. Good job, JB.
I was wrong saying that everyone only got one bite at the apple this year, because our next section is defense matters too. Only a couple defensive plays in this show, and one of them was by our guy, Andrew Van Ginkel, back in Week 1.
And here comes Daniel Jones, 12 of 22 for 111 yards. Vikes lead 21-6. Jones. Oh, he threw it to Van Ginkel. Touchdown! That's the 4th touchdown in Andrew Van Ginkel's career. And he read Daniel Jones like a book, and that book had a happy ending.
Ooh, that's a strong one. Both of Paul's entries this year were absolutely fantastic.
That's my favorite of the two, at the very least, if we're doing a Paul Allen bracket, because just to get to that stat with the quickness of Andrew Van Ginkel's career returns for a touchdown right there, to add the reading like a book, it was just a great call.
That was awesome. Let's go to another pick six. This was a thick pick. And this is KIRO, Steve Rabel.
3rd down and 7 from the Seattle 9. Blitz is coming, throw inside. It's picked off. Leo Williams coming near side. He's running like a racehorse. He's at midfield, turns upfield, has blockers. Holy smokes, are you kidding? Leo Williams is going to take it in for a touchdown. Seahawks. The Seahawks mess up a kick return. They dump it on the defense, and Leo Williams says, I got you covered. Picks it off as he drops back into coverage, comes up the near sidelines in front of the bench, picks up blockers, and takes it all the way in for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
Great job there. They were going in to go up 28-7, the Jets, in that game. That Leo Williams play turned the game around. So a big play in that game, and I love how the voice cracked.
Yeah, the legitimate excitement, and that's what we want. Don't fake it.
Let's go to the Wolfley brothers. I mean, I didn't even realize until this year that they were brothers. I guess I should have known. Craig and Ron. Ron's in Pittsburgh. Let's start there. Both these calls, by the way, are from Week 10. Let's just play them back to back. The Wolf on Wolf.
They break the huddle. Mike Williams comes to the left. 3 receivers split to the right. Warren to the left of Wilson in the shotgun. Wilson settles back, raises the foot, gets the snap, back to pass, looking, gonna float it up left for Williams, and Williams makes the grab in the end zone. What a throw, what a catch. Mike Williams, in his first game in a Steelers uniform, has hauled in a 32-yard touchdown strike from Russell Wilson.
Oh, he threw that ball wang-dang-doodle down the sidelines. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. First target, first catch. could be a game winner, Kinger. Unbelievable.
Snap to Murray, drop straight back, a fade, right corner of the end zone. Harrison, oh, what a catch with one hand for a touchdown. Marvin Harrison Jr. hauls it in with his right arm. Just a gorgeous drop in the bucket by Murray.
Spin the pig, Kyler. Spin it. Drop it. A dime being dropped into the bucket. Right over the shoulder of Marvin Harrison Jr.
Spin that pig, Kyler. I can't. It hurts.
I think there was a haiku in there.
That was amazing. That's Ron Wolfley, by the way. And we should mention they're play-by-play guys. Ron is the one in Arizona. I misspoke. Dave Pash is the play-by-play KMVP. And yes, in Pittsburgh, it's Rob King who's the play-by-play guy. And then Craig Wolfley, rather, jumps in for the Wang Dang Doodle. Just wouldn't be the same on Sundays without the Wolfley Bros. And finally, it's a couple plays that we've played on this show a couple times because we just had on our guest Bram Weinstein last week. And yet we've talked about it a lot on this show. I think the Commanders were kind of the team this year. I don't know. They were just part of so many of the best moments of the season. Let's listen to Bram and London Fletcher in the divisional round.
Third down to 10. Snap to Goff. Steps up. Good pocket. Throws in the middle.
Picked off. Jeremy Chinn's got it. That's it. Celebrate like it's 1991. We're going to the NFC Championship game.
This is the Motown, the home of Motown, and tonight they'll be playing the blues, baby.
I think I could hear them dap it up in the booth on that call.
There's a call, I think it might have been the Monday night winner against the Bengals, where I think Bram mentions that London Fletcher punched him. Like he says, I just got punched in the booth. And like I said, that's another booth where I had like 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough to pick.
I love the trash talk too, immediately by London Fletcher. That's an ex-player thing that he's immediately sticking in the Lions' face a little bit. Bram does such a good job covering the team and making you just enthusiastic by listening to him that after talking to him, I flipped my pick to the Commanders last week. And now I'm mad at Bram about that. So to feel better, let's listen to, we got to listen to the Hail Mary before we get out of here.
Bears have 8 deep, 4 of them at the goal line. They bring 3. Daniels backing up. He's just going to have to let one fly. Goes to the right side. Steps away from the defenders. Gives himself some time. Now steps up, fires. Heads towards the end zone. It is...
No, that's it.
That's why we do this. To have that moment culminate where you can hear the booth absolutely losing it. I think that's what great about all of Bram's calls is the way he accelerates into the touchdown Washington, and you can feel it. And fans will always remember this 2024 season. They ultimately didn't get the ending result that they started to believe. But right there in those moments is why you believe. It's why we do all those things, and it's that one's tough to beat, Greg.
It is, and yet I don't like having to choose one. Maybe in future years, like we'll have a bracket or something. But it just feels like a slight to say anything is beating that moment with Andrew Siciliano and Nathan Zagura. That was incredible. The McConkey one by Money and DJ, like I loved it. The Higbee one coming back, like the Paul Allen, Van Ginkel. The Hail Mary is going to stick with me. The Richardson throw, I think you were really well said on that the play call was as good as the throw. And so I hope no one gets mad here.
Okay.
But I'm going to give it to Mike Keith and his Week 11 call. And it's partly for that call, which was outstanding. And it's partly for the years of enjoyment that Mike Keith has given listeners in Nashville and hopefully on the Around the NFL podcast and on this podcast. And Mike Keith, to me, he's the man. And since we won't get to hear him anymore, I guess I'm giving it to Mike Keith.
It makes perfect sense. A team that for some reason still wears those Oilers uniforms that instead of sticking into their identity in Nashville, and Mike Keith is that to me. So he deserves honor. I think like in terms of technical and execution and summarizing things, Paul Allen.
Okay.
We're giving, franchise voice cornerstones their flowers. I'd give it to him for Van Ginkel reading Daniel Jones like a book.
Love it. And yes, I think that Hail Mary call will live forever, that's better than any award.
The touchdown with less than 10 seconds to Terry McLaurin to win the game, that would be a great Bram call. You could legitimately have your own Bram Weinstein bracket.
I think that Siciliano call is going to live in the hearts and minds of a lot of Browns fans forever. And spin that pig is going to do it for me as well. Let's get out of here. We'll be back on Friday. Going to have my friends Adam and Ryan from the Saints Block Party podcast. They've been boots on the ground in Senior Bowl this week. Like, oh yeah, NFL Network's got Daniel Jeremiah and Charles Davis. We got Adam and Ryan coming on the show to recap the week at the Senior Bowl. Looking forward to that. And yeah, let's end this with a little Mike Keith. When we're saying goodbye to a legend, football is back.
Levis in the shotgun. 6 men set to rush. Levis from his end zone, firing deep downfield for Westbrook. Akine's got it! 40, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, 5, end zone! Touchdown! Titans! The longest touchdown pass of the year in the National